Hey guys, this is Jay Road, and today we have the honor to have Max Wu, founder of Nyan Heroes. Hello, Max. How are you?
Hi, very good. Thanks, Jose. It's great to be here.
Thanks. Thanks so much for being here. It's an honor. So let's start with some background about you. You started with a medical career, right, as a surgeon. What inspired you to shift to gaming?
I mean, I've been a gamer my whole life. Growing up in primary school, high school, I always loved games. And my background in medicine and surgery, it was kind of more of a dream of my parents rather than my own. And so, growing up in a very conservative household, I was a good Asian son, so I listened to my parents well. But eventually, after spending some time in the industry, I realized that, it wasn't really my passion. And even though I'd spent so much time studying and working, it's still, there's still a good, 40, 50 years of my life and a career that I can build that I felt that, I just wanted to do something that I really loved. So that's why I left that industry. I went into the creative industry, which was kind of more of my passion. I really like creating. I think I've got a pretty weird and wacky brain. And I like creating products or experiences that are unique to communities, to users, and just kind of bringing something that's a little left field and something that I think people can really genuinely connect with.
Great. And as a CEO, you've taken Nyan Heroes from concept to a highly anticipated game. Can you share more about your vision for Nyan Heroes and how you see influencing the Web3 space?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost, we want to establish ourselves as one of the flagship games in Web3, and specifically for the high-end, sort of mid-core to hardcore gamer vertical. We're building on PC first. We've had a pre-alpha on Epic Games, and so we wanted to position ourselves as a real kind of standout shooter, something that could stand up against traditional AAA games, even in Web 2. We've been highly inspired by games like Valorant, Apex, Overwatch, and even a bit of Titanfall sprinkled in there. And so ultimately, the vision is to sort of create our own niche in Web3, but eventually expand more broadly into the traditional gaming markets.
Great. But also, introducing blockchain technology into a game has a ton of challenges and also opportunities. Can you discuss your hurdles to implement blockchain into a game and why you felt the need to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer for why blockchain, it's always different depending on who you talk to. For me, it's much more, I guess, it's a much more conceptual reason as to why I believe that it's necessary. I've always loved collecting card games when I was young, and I used to play a lot of Magic. I did have a pretty decent stint in the Pokemon collecting card game as well.
Me too.
But yeah, and to this day, I still have all of my cards. They're in, somewhere in the attic in a box that I haven't opened in years, but I know that they're there. And for me, that brings around quite a nostalgic feeling, knowing that, hey, I spent a good many years of my life playing with these cards and collecting them, and the kind of joy of opening a new pack. I think lately, I've been playing games throughout the last few decades, and seeing the games industry develop and mature and kind of change paradigms. I got pretty addicted to the kind of mobile gacha industry at one point in my life. Not recently, but a few years ago. And whilst I still got the dopamine of opening loot boxes and seeing if there was something rare that came out, I don't get the same nostalgic feeling now that I do when I think about those gacha games as when I think about my trading card collection, because ultimately many of those games no longer exist. They're no longer live anymore. They've been taken off the shelf, and I don't have access to those assets that, even though I never use them in Magic or Pokemon anymore, it still holds something a lot more sentimental because I know that they're mine. I think that is the core thesis behind why blockchain technology is so important, because it unlocks this subconscious feeling that this is yours. And maybe it's kind of a vague topic, and maybe some people don't quite get it, or they don't agree with it, or they don't think it's that important. But for people like me that firsthand experience of all of these insidious monetization tactics of there's some of these mobile games out there, it's highly predatory. It leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth sometimes when I've been maximally value extracted. But I do think that if there's this knowledge underpinning all of that extraction, that actually you own these assets, you can do whatever you want with them, you can trade them live during the game, or you can hang on to them, and no matter what happens to the game, you will still have them. Maybe other games will pick them up. Maybe modders or the developer community will kind of pick up these assets and create something on their own with them. You never really know, but ultimately they are there, they are yours, and I think that is really powerful.
So
so
true.
yeah.
Please proceed.
I think, well, the second part of your question I remember was, well, what are some of the challenges of incorporating blockchain into the game? And there are a ton of challenges. I'm not even quite sure where to start. But I think one of the main challenges, for me at least, is figuring out how we can appeal or capture the attention of two divergent user bases. Because on one hand, you have your Web3 users. Some people like to refer them as degens. Some people like to refer to them as gamblers. And then you have your Web2 or your traditional gamer user base, which I hope everyone in the industry is very familiar with that target audience. But ultimately, they want two very different things. And so the challenge for a lot of these games in Web3 is, well, how do you serve both of these audiences? And I think a lot of projects and games will struggle with this. Some of them will kind of veer more closely towards the Web3. They'll kind of play on the more degen mindset, the sort of gambler mindset, the high risk taker mindset, whereas others will sit more in the Web2 sphere. And our challenge at the moment for Nyan Heroes is we're trying our best to sort of tread the middle ground, where we can appeal in some ways to the Web3 crowd. We do want to incentivize them and offer this kind of incentive alignment through a tokenized economy. At the same time, we don't want to go fully into that direction and start saying, okay, we're a gambling project. And so for us, it's treading that line that has been the most challenging so far.
Great, amazing answer. So also, Nyan Heroes is committed to social causes, particularly animal rescue, right? How do you balance these philanthropic goals with the commercial objective of the game? And why you think this integration is important to you and to the company?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, obviously, I'm a huge cat person, in case people didn't know, but I'm sure everyone knows, but at this point, I have 5 cats.
Right?
I have 5. Yeah. It's growing. The family is growing. But all of them are super unique. They all have their own, unique personalities. It's very entertaining. But I also do, cat charity work in my own time as well. I do, I work with local cat shelters and save cats and things like that. But when this project started, I saw it as a way to make more meaningful impact at a larger scale than what I was doing on my own. And so this is something that is obviously very close to my heart. We've donated to multiple charities. Our main partner is Best Friends Animal Society in the US. And so yeah, I think we've donated over $350,000 to the cause so far. Obviously, it does come with the other side of the coin is to your point. How do we balance this with our business strategy and our business plans? Ultimately, our structure as we get closer to game launch is that we want to allocate. It's a percentage basis. Percentage of the revenue, percentage of the profits that go into the studio will be kind of allocated into a pool that we want to use for social good. So it's not a fixed price. So obviously we want to be mindful that the studio has different life cycles, and when you launch, typically that's when the revenue starts. And pre-launch, you might get some here and there, but you're probably not going to be generating a lot depending on your business models. So that's kind of why we allocate a percentage base for that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone in Web3, they're playing with magic internet money, and I think it's important to just take a step back and recognize that there is a world outside of these red and green flashing bars, and where we can make an impact, that's where we try and do it.
Great, amazing. Nyan Heroes features unique gameplay mechanics and character designs with cats. What inspired this concept?
Well, the first thing that inspired it was my own cats, and the second thing was my love for Japanese anime manga. I grew up consuming a lot of manga when I was young, and one of the first animes that I watched was this really OG one called Neon Genesis Evangelion. And it's a story about these little kids that pilot these giant mechs called Avas. That was essentially my gateway into the anime world, and again, very nostalgic for me. So when I was coming up with IP, I thought, man, well, that was a really nostalgic anime, and what if we threw my own cats into the cockpit instead of these kids? And that's literally how it came about. So we underwent multiple sort of visual iterations of the project. It started out a little cutesy and a little quirky, but slowly we've been molding it to what it is today. And it's quite I guess, at surface level, it sounds a bit quirky, but if you look at the visual identity of the game and you look at the art, people could tell, oh, okay, they're actually, taking it seriously. It looks legitimate. It's, high fidelity. The art style is very much suited. It's kind of like an East meets West fusion art style. And I think it's ultimately something that will appeal to a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, that's where the inspiration comes from. And, we try and get as much of the cat personality out into the game as possible.
Nice. What are some of your most recent wins with Nyan Heroes? And is there any announcement or something you envision for the future of the game?
Yeah, I mean, we recently had our pre-alpha demo launched through Epic Games. It was a 2-week playtest, so not a whole lot of time actually, but we were able to generate a lot of excitement and traction around our game. And this kind of thing really outperformed even our own internal expectations. We had over 1.3 million user registrations. We ended up in the top 5 most wishlisted games on Epic. And when the game was live for those 2 weeks, we ended up getting into the top 30 most played games globally on the Epic Play Store, which was amazing because you look at all the different titles there, and it's like Fortnite, Genshin Impact, PUBG, and we're on that same page. It was a great feeling. So we were ranked 28th. We ended up with about close to 50,000 daily active users towards the end of our playtest, which was amazing. And so I think that was very validating for us because we wanted to prove out the core loop of the game. And in addition to that, we actually managed to get a good amount of Web2 gamers playing the game, surprisingly. We did market a little bit to some Web2 content creators. We weren't expecting a lot, to be honest, in terms of the feedback, because typically in the West, the feedback is very negative. But surprisingly, with our content creators, we had a positive feedback for across all of them. Not only the content creators, but even their audience and their viewers. We ran sentiment analysis on all of their streams, and it unanimously went from usually negative or neutral in the beginning to overwhelmingly positive towards the end. And I think that's a first for a PC-based Web3 game. So very excited about what the future holds for us. Yeah.
Great, amazing, great stats too. And finally, having successfully raised a significant funding and built a game studio from scratch. Do you have any advice for young entrepreneurs that maybe want to follow your path?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a different path to take. Obviously, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. The way that we do things is a little bit more geared towards the traditional gamers. We wanted to make a game that was fundamentally, a traditional game with Web3 elements layered on top. But that's not the approach that all Web3 gaming studios take in the space, and some of them are building fully on-chain games. Some of them, have different, more sort of Web3 elements incorporated into them, and they're also seeing success in their own ways. So ultimately, it's not like there's a blueprint to do this. I think the most important thing is to think deeply about what it is that, your core vision, your North Star, what is that? But, before you even start. And as long as you're doing things for the right reasons, your intentions are good, you have, plans to build something amazing, and, your vision is noble, then you should just go out there and stick with it. In Web3, the pacing and the environment is so fast. There's a new narrative every week, maybe several narratives every week. And it's really important not to get too distracted with the ongoing narrative of the time. Because if you do that and you're chasing all these shiny objects, you'll eventually lose sight and dilute your overall vision. And so for us, we had a vision at day one. I'm very happy to say that overall guiding vision has never changed since we started. We've spoken to a lot of people in the space. Some of them have suggested that we go different directions, and some of them have strongly suggested that what we're doing wouldn't work. And ultimately, we took their advice, but we ultimately continued along our journey, without sort of diverging too much from our overall direction. I think that's the most important thing. As long as you're doing things for the right reasons, you have a solid vision, just stick with it. Find people that are aligned with that vision. If there's people that are not aligned, you don't have to spend too much time bending over backwards for those people. Just find people that are aligned with you, that really support you through the good times as well as the bad. And I think that would be my biggest advice.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today, Max. Bye bye.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jose.